Oh, hello world. This is Shruti Pandey, and I can't tell you all the emotions that I'm feeling right now because just look who I have today with me on the podcast. It's just a dream come true. It's a big, big honor, big, big privilege for the fact that I became a tester in India almost 10, 11 years back. Uh, Testing didn't have respect that much that time, didn't even have that much money given to us at that time. We didn't know about communities. We didn't know about a lot many legends like Dorothy, Lisa, Michael, and I'm keeping the best one for the last. This guy, oh my goodness, I can't tell you how happy, nervous, excited, everything I am right now, James. Thank you so, so, so much. Thank you so much for gracing this platform. It means a lot to me.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
And extremely sorry for having you get up early in the morning for this podcast. I really apologize for that. But I really love all the background that you have, be it the skull of the pirate and the polygons. The background is really, really amazing, including the
My
goggles.
wife helped me curate my background, put all kinds of little doodads in there. So yeah, thanks to her. So thank you for inviting me. I've been watching your posts on LinkedIn, and the reason why I've been watching you is because you posted something on LinkedIn. I don't remember what it was. It was a couple months ago, and I made a critical comment on it. I argued with it, or I was critical of it, and you came back with this very gracious and friendly response, which I don't normally get when I am critical of people and ideas on LinkedIn. And I found it a very disarming and gracious response. So I decided after that I wasn't going to be snarky about things that you posted anymore, because well, you deserve better. So that's how I started watching the stuff that you post.
Oh my God. No, this, you have no idea what this meant to me. Like, literally, if somebody could see a 3D version of my head at back, it's exploding right now with all those amazing words you said for me. And I remember you either liking or commenting on my posts, and it always meant a lot to me. And I definitely echo your sentiments about LinkedIn being a difficult platform, is how I feel or look at it. Because I've been writing since the past 2 years or a little more than that. And people just pass their judgment, remarks, and sometimes even a dirty trash on you. And it's very, very overwhelming because all we want is to share whatever little knowledge we have with the world. So I understand. And I'm pretty sure your comment didn't mean any harm to me. And it
Well,
would have been something nice.
I
And
have a protocol for commenting. I always ask myself before I press the submit button
right.
if the comment that I'm making is, to the best of my ability to determine, is it a helpful comment? Could it help a reasonable person to think about the subject in a better way, or to be more responsible? Sometimes I post comments that are quite critical and they sound grumpy, but in those situations, almost always, I'm commenting on someone who is, I feel, trying to close down the freedoms of testers, the possibilities of testers. If I think somebody is trying to subtly bully testers, well, then I will be sharper with them, especially if they present themselves as an expert. So sometimes people present themselves like, I'm a business owner or entrepreneur or an expert, and I say there's only two ways to think about this. And I like to come in and say, well, I've got a third way and a fourth way. You could also think that way. That's
Exactly.
possible too. I exist too, and people like me. So I'm always trying to be helpful. Sometimes I fail to get that across, and somebody thinks I'm just trying to hurt them. Sometimes I find that I had a little bit of anger in me that I didn't realize was there in my response. So I think that's what happened when I commented on your thing, which I wish I could remember. I would have taken a screenshot of it to show people, but it's
You
too long to scroll back.
you have commented on so many of my posts. Now I'm wondering which one was it.
Well, it would be the very first one, I think, that I commented on was the one you had this unreasonably friendly reply to a rather snarky thing that I said, and I felt that a little bit ashamed of myself, I think. And
You
after that,
messaged
I
me
just
after that.
resolved
And you
that I'm
messaged me after that. You
always gonna
messaged
interpret what you say in the most positive possible way that I possibly can. I just made that policy for myself, and I do that with some people on Twitter and in other places. I have sometimes had to tell somebody something that I felt I needed to say, but that they wouldn't like at all, and they would find difficult to deal with. And occasionally they've come back with a just extremely understanding and open-minded response, which is very surprising, because like you say, it's a hard platform. It's very easy for people to get offended. And so when somebody doesn't get offended when you say that, they're not thinking about this in a good way, or they're not well informed about the facts, and they come back and say, oh, tell me more, what do you mean? I want to understand better. Then it makes you go, wow, this is someone special. And if you have someone who's trying, see, I have a reputation for attacking people, but the people who complain about that often don't notice who I'm attacking.
Yeah.
I'm not attacking freshers who are trying to learn. I go out of my way to do everything I can to encourage people who might be ignorant, but they're trying to learn. They're trying to be better. Versus someone who's been in the field 20 years and still thinks that all testing should be automated and that we don't really need a testing role, because can't we all just be developers and just try to make the product good? And why do we have testers anyway?
Yeah.
If these testers were really serious, they'd just be agile team members. And there are people with a lot of experience who claim that, and I think that's very damaging to the testing world when people talk that way. And I mean, those are the people that I really argue with, are those folks.
Yes.
And then people see me say, oh, you don't know what you're doing, and you're an idiot or whatever. I might say something like that.
Oh.
But I'm not saying that to new graduates who are trying to understand.
you don't say that to either the new ones or even the old ones. You basically have always noticed, if you're harsh on people, they are, like you rightly said, it's basically the bullies. And they might call themselves expert or whatever, but every time I've seen on those posts, the person who would have posted whatever they have written with their expertise gets the fewer likes compared to your comment, which gets more comments on it and more likes on it, which means that a lot of people look up to you. And I remember there have been times in my different roles and places where I, you know, stand like an armor or a shield that the youngsters, the juniors in my team shouldn't get affected by any of the nonsense and crap that is being thrown at them. And that's exactly how I look at you,
Well,
because
that's what I'm hoping. So
that's
I'm happy
exactly
to
what you do.
say that. I'm hoping that I can attract attacks, attract the arrows to myself, so it might save somebody else from being attacked. I hope that I'm willing to say things that other people might be thinking, but they're afraid to say it. I hope that I won't be as afraid to say it. Um, there are things that I'm not going to talk about that I think are important and useful and true, but I'm not going to talk about on LinkedIn or anywhere else. Well, not on LinkedIn or Twitter, because I might talk about them, in a place like this, in a podcast like this,
Sure.
because I have a chance to get my point across a little bit better. Like in my classes, for instance, I sometimes tell stories because I want to talk about diversity. I want to talk about the importance of diversity in test teams. And sometimes that means, if I'm going to be fully authentic about it, I need to tell stories about how when I was a young manager, I didn't believe in diversity. I felt like I don't want to work with women. I'll just work with men because it's easier for me to work with men. And then I tell stories about how I learned, not through being bullied into it, not through being forced into it, but through experiences, that I was more powerful when I worked with people who were not like me, when I brought people into my team who thought in ways that I found irritating, but that irritation was a helpful irritation that I realized it made me stronger and safer. And I liked feeling stronger and safer, even though it was irritating. It's kind of like you might wear a bulletproof vest that's a little itchy, but then the bullets come in and they bounce off and you go, whoa, I'm sure glad I have this bulletproof vest on. Okay, it's a little itchy, it's heavy, it's hot, but I still feel better wearing it when the bullets are flying. And those bullets are little bugs that are trying to sink my career. And someone on my team finds that bug because they think in a certain way that I don't think. I don't have a certain empathy for users that they have. I don't have a certain educational background that they have. I don't talk to people. That happened. The first woman I ever hired at Apple Computer when I was, I think, 21 years old, a very young manager, just starting to get management trained. So I was not, qualified to be a manager. But they made me a manager anyway, and I liked being a manager. But the first woman that I worked with did something that no one else on my team had thought to do, because I only hired loud, combative young men. I think it was all young white men at that time, just people like me, like myself. And my theory was it'll be easier to manage them because I understand them. And we all like the same things. We all like pizza. We all like comedy clubs. We'll socialize. We're all single. None of us have kids.
Sure.
Well, actually, at the time, I wasn't single. I became single in there, and then I got married again. So, but
Okay.
none of us had kids at the time, so that was easy. We
Right.
all could work late. We could all work weekends. No family obligations. So, I mean, it was easy.
Right.
So I thought that's my theory is if it's easy to manage a team, you'll do better. And that is true. It was easy to manage. And so that there's a lot to be said for that. But we were all programmers and we were all technocrats and we were all into mathematics. We all thought in one particular way. So then I hire the first female that I've ever worked with, and I'm nervous about that. But circumstances made it so it was easier to hire her than to wait to hire someone else. And she was qualified and she was friendly. So I mean, we just hired her. Well, immediately she did something nobody else on my team did. She went to the developers and she spoke nicely and friendly to them. And she asked them for information about the product that we were testing. And they gave her a stack of documentation that they had not given me. And I think in retrospect, they were withholding it from me because they didn't like how I talked to them because I wasn't respectful. And in those days, I wasn't respectful. My attitude was, I want to be the best test manager in the world. And I'm going to do my job and I'm going to do it well. So give me all the documentation, give me all the information. You do your job, I'll do my job. I didn't come to them with respect in my voice. So she went and she had a big smile and a soft manner and didn't argue with them. And she came back with all this material wealth that we needed. Now, I could have gotten upset. I could have escalated to my management. I could have said, man, development's playing games with us. They're not giving us the stuff that they should have given us. But instead of getting angry, what I realized is it really makes a difference to have someone with a different personality, a social personality, a friendly personality. She's like an ambassador for our team. The team now has more abilities than it had before because I hired someone who did something I didn't think to do or I wouldn't have wanted to do. So to me, that was a real big moment. And I remember it, years later. I remember certain moments where the light went on for me of why does diversity matter? Why do I want different kinds of people?
Yeah.
It's harder to manage. Why do I want it? And then I have these moments where I go, that's why.
Yeah.
And I tell stories like this sometimes, and most people get it. But once in a while, someone in the class will send me a comment or they'll comment to somebody else. Usually it's to somebody else who then tells me. And they'll say like, oh, he's such a sexist. Like, I was a sexist. Now, I believe all men are sexist. I believe everybody's a sexist to some degree. I believe all men, heterosexual men, are certainly sexist, whether they tell you they are or not. If they say they're not sexist, they're just lying, or they're saying that they believe they're not very sexist. They're only a little sexist. I believe that you can reduce sexism in the industry and in the world if you talk about it.
Absolutely.
You have to talk about it. I find that when I talk about it, I feel when I talk about it to someone I'm working with, where I say, look, I don't want to be sexist, but the fact is that I have a certain way of thinking and speaking. I like to argue. I believe that debate is very important. And so if I respect you, then I'm going to debate you. And except the thing is a lot of people, especially women, when you come at them as a man and especially as an older man, and you debate them, they feel you're scolding them. They feel you're attacking them. And so I need to have a conversation so that I can control myself and keep myself from dragging someone too much into a debate. who might not have that style of communication. I still think debate is important.
Right.
If I talk to you and we're going to work together and you're worried about, can you argue with me? Will I respect you if you don't argue with me? If we just have a conversation like this about that, and if you were to tell me, I'm worried about that, James, because I'm not really a fighter, and if you need me to fight with you, then you're not never going to like me, and you're never going to want to work with me, and I'm worried about that. If you were to say that,
Right.
then it would make it easier for me to make it easier for you, because I'd feel like you would appreciate what I'm trying to do and how hard it is for me to do it differently, to talk differently.
Yeah.
And I would appreciate how hard it is for you to operate according to my comfort culture, where for me, debate's where I'm comfortable. I feel excited when I disagree with people. I don't necessarily sometimes I feel bad, but I often feel really good when I'm arguing with someone that I respect. But I've been terribly burned by behaving towards someone in the way that I say to myself, this is how I would want to be treated. So I'll treat this person how I want to be treated.
Right.
And I've had situations where, a prominent speaker who's very well known in the industry thought that I was trying to hurt her, and then tweets to her friends that I'm a terrible person, and then years later I'm still getting attacked by these people that she called down from heaven onto me. And I'm like, wow, I was really in a bind, because I was just trying to treat you like a strong adult person, and instead you think I was trying to do the opposite. And I don't get it. But this is an issue.
It is.
I think we've got to talk about these things at the very least, and I do think we need to debate them.
Absolutely. I mean, thank you so much for sharing this story with me, James, because these stories are what is more important. I mean, there is testing, there are things, but how do we make testing happen is a whole another ball game altogether. And I have been a female tester, the only female tester in all the teams that I worked for many, many years. So when you're sharing your story, I could relate to a lot many sentiments.
What's your experience of that? Tell me about. So help me understand your experience. Then
I'll tell you, because I found some similarities and some differences, and of course, right, maybe it's also due to the culture and the different continents that we are a part of. But
right.
I also honestly appreciate the fact that you were so honest in being that everybody is going to be sexist at the end of the day, and the fact that we are just trying to lie to each other in the light of fairness, that we are trying to be fair. It's just bullshitting each other, really. So it's better that we get truthful and honest to each other. So I remember, if I mean, imagine if I'm the only female in the automation testing team, or just the testing team, whatever they try to call it, there weren't any female developers as well in the development team. So it becomes very different dynamically. And I remember there was one particular bank that I worked with. So after I left, there was another female who was hired in the team for performance testing. And a year later, she calls me and she tells me that the head of testing in her reviews told her that she should be like me and she should try to get more assertive. And I was like, what the hell? He never told me this ever. And like I said, I would always take the bullet for my team members. And all, I understand your fact about, there are not always two ways of doing things. That's the first thing about a good tester. Like, we need to think about different scenarios. I remember times when I've gone to my, the business analyst who would have given, oh, Shruti, there are just these 4 scenarios and that's it. and all of them are positive testing scenarios. And I'm like, no, but what if some user does this? And they would listen to me, they would at least try to listen to me and then get it integrated or not, depending upon whatever our capabilities was or were. And like you said about the code thing, it is so important as a tester for me to understand what has been created as a product, what technology is being used, what things are done. So I, despite being a tester, would always go about understanding how the code has been written, if there are unit tests written inside or not. And I would raise this with the developers, that why are you not having unit tests? Why are you leaving that stub empty? And I remember I was a QA lead at the time. I was leading, like, about 7 8 permanent employees and vendors. All of them were men and boys. And the development lead once got really mad at me because he thought that I know all the code and he doesn't. And exactly that was happening. And I was like, this is your development team. Why don't you understand what's, like, I didn't understand what was his problem in not understanding the code for himself. If I, as a tester, knows and understand what has been done in the system, he should be knowing it too, right? And I think it was a little bit of, I don't know, the fact that, oh, she's a female and she understands better. So anytime there was an issue,
Yeah,
I'd also be called and he would
it
feel a
could
little intimidated.
because especially for a young man, and I might say that a few times because I noticed that as I get older, this is becoming less of a problem in my own emotions. But it
He
was
wasn't a
more,
young
it was
man. He
more
was
of
a
a
married
problem.
man with a kid, by the way.
Say again.
He wasn't a very young man. He was a married man with a kid.
Well, okay, so he has less excuse. But um, uh, the thing about it is when men are used to fighting and struggling with and being interrupted by and being contended with by other men. We're used to it. We understand how that works. But so and we know we can push back. We can push back. And then here comes a female, and we feel like this isn't fair because we can't push back. Like I can do with another man. Now I have to, like, put my hands behind my back and let you pummel me because society says, I can't be seen as, attacking a female. So then we get resentful of that. That's one thing. Another thing is, it is especially humiliating for many men. I think for all men, it's especially humiliating to be argued with or attacked by or feeling attacked by a woman. It's just extra humiliating. And for biological reasons, for cultural reasons, and it's probably especially a problem in the Indian culture, little less in the American culture, but it certainly is
Yeah.
a problem in our culture too. And it's still his responsibility to take care of himself and to behave himself and all that. It's just, that's a fact that it does feel especially humiliating just because you are female. If you say anything slightly critical, it just comes out as much louder and much more critical than if another guy said the exact same thing, made exactly the same point. So that's why if we talk about it a little bit, I find, then we can sort of understand each other. It's kind of like this happens in my family, in my household. We all get along really well with each other in this household, and I'm very proud of that. But we all have a similar thing that we do where, my wife will ask me to do something that I don't want to do because I'm tired, or, but she needs me to do it. And I'm going like, okay, I guess I got to do it. And then all she has to do is say anything at all that shows that she understands that I'm tired, and she understands that it's hard for me, and she understands that I don't want to do it. And suddenly I feel like I want to do it. Somehow just feeling listened to, just feeling understood,
Right.
somehow takes away
Right.
the problem.
You know,
My son does this too, where I'll say, Oliver, I need you to do this. And he goes, oh, Dad, oh, I hate doing that. And then I go, okay, don't have to do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. If you don't like it, it's okay. I'll take care of it. And then I turn around and an hour later, he's finished it. I was like, I thought you didn't want to do it. And he's like, oh, it's not so bad, Dad. And,
this actually solved a very common problem for the both of us, and a big one for me as well, because like you said, if a female shares a critical problem, it looks critical, but in all the different places I've been, my experience has actually been the same. So for example, we are in a group and we are talking about different solutions, and I would give a solution which is probably whatever, good, bad, ugly, and just minutes later another guy would repeat exactly the same thing, and the other guys would be like, oh yeah, he made sense. And I was like, was I invisible? Like, was I not clear? Was I on mute? Like, did you not hear me? I told the exact same thing. And I think that this is really the problem of the different genders, that all of us really want to be heard and want
yeah,
to listen to.
I think I had an experience that helps me appreciate what you say,
Huh?
because I think I haven't appreciated that through most of my life, because I just feel like, what's the problem, Shruti? Just talk louder next time. Just fight harder next time. That's what I do. When other men ignore me, when men interrupt me, I just interrupt them back. I just go harder till they can't ignore me. But
Then the second gender problems come into picture, where it's like, oh my god, she's a female and she's shouting
right.
loud,
So
whatever, like, right?
let me tell you this. This happened to me, and it's this, I think, is a similar experience. I was at an airport, and they were searching. This woman was searching my bag at the security line, right? And she's searching it very carefully and slowly.
Okay.
And I saw her colleagues came over and said, you don't really have to do this. And she said, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it thoroughly. Thank you. And you could tell that they felt like she was just slowing everybody down. So I'm standing there watching her, waiting for her to finish searching my bag. And I felt bad for her, because I get to the airport super early, just in case something like this happens. I have plenty of time. So I don't mind. Search whatever you want. So I started telling her, encouraging things. I said, well, it's wonderful to see someone take this job really seriously, because we don't want terrorists in the sky. And then she kept searching. And I said, normally people in government jobs don't try very hard. So I'm glad that you're trying very hard. And I made a couple other comments like this. And finally she looked up at me and said, sir, I'll have you arrested if you keep making these offensive remarks. And I'm shocked, because every one of my remarks was trying to say, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. But I realized she thought I was being sarcastic. She only heard sarcasm. And I realized that there was nothing I could do with my voice. There's nothing I could say. There's no words that would get me out of this. She has made me a character in a play on a stage, where everything I say is I'm a villain. I'm another person trying to hurt her. And I'm trapped. I'm trapped in this role that she has created, that she's put me in, because she couldn't believe that I actually admire her for what she's doing. She thought that can't be right. He must be just he thinks I'm stupid. He thinks he's just having fun at my expense, and I'm sick of it. So I realized in that moment that the only thing I could do was just be quiet. And I couldn't help her, and I couldn't relieve her pain. I couldn't take her pain away because of her belief system. And then I thought later, maybe this is what women go through when, you try to talk about technical stuff and you're attractive or something, and they just think like, isn't she cute? Isn't she cute? And she's not, and they're not interested in you participating in the technical discussion.